Why is it that sometimes the woman who gives the most attention is remembered the least, while the woman who simply carries herself differently stays in a man's mind long after she leaves? This is where most women misunderstand attraction. They believe that trying harder will make them more valuable, so they become more available, more understanding, more accommodating, and more eager to prove that they are better than every other option around him. But psychologically, the opposite can happen. When you constantly try to prove your worth, you quietly communicate that your worth needs his approval. There is a powerful difference between being available and being valuable. Attention is easy to receive. A person can give attention to dozens of people in a single day. But emotional significance is rare. It develops when someone begins to associate you with a feeling, an experience, or a quality they don't easily find elsewhere. That is why a man can have countless options and still become deeply focused on one woman. It isn't always because she is the most beautiful, the most available, or the woman who tries the hardest. Sometimes she simply creates something psychologically different. She doesn't compete for his attention. She doesn't chase every moment of uncertainty. She doesn't desperately try to convince him that she is the right choice. And this leads to one of the most powerful principles in human psychology. People often value what they feel they could lose. When someone knows they can access you whenever they want, your presence can gradually become familiar. But when your presence is connected to standards, self-respect, individuality, and emotional depth, it carries a different kind of weight. The goal is not to manipulate him into fearing your absence. The goal is to become so grounded in yourself that you no longer need to compete with anyone. You don't make him choose you by defeating every other woman. You make yourself psychologically difficult to replace. The moment you stop trying to prove that you deserve his attention, something changes in the entire dynamic. Most people don't realize how quickly the pursuit of validation can destroy mystery. When you constantly look for signs that he is interested, repeatedly check whether he noticed you, explain your intentions, or work harder whenever he becomes distant, your focus quietly shifts from connection to approval. And once you begin seeking approval, you stop allowing him to discover your value naturally. There is a difference between attracting attention and commanding respect. Attention can be temporary. Respect is built through consistency, boundaries, and self-possession. Anyone can compete for attention, but a woman who doesn't feel the need to compete creates a completely different psychological impression. This is why constantly explaining yourself can lower your perceived value. When someone repeatedly explains why they deserve better treatment, why they are different, or why their intentions are genuine, they may accidentally communicate insecurity. Your strongest qualities don't always need a speech. Think about the people who leave the strongest impression. They rarely need to announce their confidence. You see it in what they tolerate, what they refuse, how they respond under pressure, and how comfortably they can walk away from something that doesn't align with their standards. Confidence is often communicated through what you refuse to do. You refuse to chase someone who repeatedly withdraws. You refuse to compete for basic attention. You refuse to over-explain your worth. You refuse to turn every moment of uncertainty into a desperate conversation. Instead, you let your actions speak. You continue your life. You maintain your standards. You give genuine affection when it is reciprocated, but you don't use affection as currency to purchase someone's commitment. And this is where the psychological shift happens. When you stop auditioning for his approval, he gets the opportunity to evaluate you without being pushed toward a conclusion. If you want to become memorable, stop focusing so much on what you say and start paying attention to what he feels when he is around you. People often forget exact conversations. They forget individual compliments, jokes, and small details, but they remember emotional experiences. They remember the person who made them feel understood. They remember the person around whom they could finally relax. They remember the person who made an ordinary moment feel unexpectedly meaningful. This is the power of emotional contrast. If someone constantly experiences pressure, demands, criticism, or emotional chaos, then a person who brings calm can feel completely different. If his world is predictable, genuine curiosity can feel refreshing. If he rarely feels truly understood, deep attention can become memorable. But this does not mean pretending to be peaceful, mysterious, or emotionally perfect. It means becoming intentional about the quality of the connection you create. You don't need to impress him with endless stories, constant availability, or exaggerated affection. In fact, trying too hard to impress can make the interaction feel like a performance. Instead, make him feel seen. Listen to what he says instead of preparing your next response. Notice the details he casually reveals. Ask questions that show genuine curiosity. Allow conversations to move beyond surface-level topics. Sometimes the most powerful connection comes from making someone feel that they don't have to perform around you. There is a major difference between being entertaining and being emotionally unforgettable. Entertainment gives someone a moment. Emotional connection gives someone a feeling they may later associate with you. That feeling could be peace, it could be curiosity, it could be excitement. It could be the rare sensation of being accepted without needing to constantly prove something. And when that experience becomes associated with your presence, you stop being just another person competing for attention. You become a distinct emotional memory. So don't ask yourself, how can I make him impressed by me? Ask yourself, what kind of experience does he consistently have when he is with me? Because attention can be given to many people, but a meaningful emotional experience is much harder to replace. There is something powerful about a person who cannot be understood completely in the first few conversations. Not because she is playing games, not because she is deliberately withholding affection, but because she understands that real connection develops through discovery. When you reveal your entire emotional world too quickly, you remove the opportunity for curiosity to develop. You explain every feeling, every intention, every past experience, every expectation, and every detail of your life before the other person has even had the chance to become genuinely invested. Mystery creates mental involvement because the mind naturally wants to complete what feels unfinished. When something remains partially undiscovered, curiosity keeps working in the background. He may wonder about the parts of your personality he hasn't seen yet. He may remember something you said and become curious about what you meant. He may notice that there are layers to you that cannot be understood through one conversation. And that is very different from trying to be mysterious. Artificial mystery feels like manipulation. Healthy boundaries feel like self-respect. You don't have to answer every question immediately. You don't have to explain every emotion the moment you experience it. You don't have to reveal your deepest vulnerabilities simply because someone has shown temporary interest. Some parts of you should be earned through consistency. Let him discover your humor over time. Let him discover your ambitions through your actions. Let him discover your softness through trust. Let him discover your depth through meaningful conversations, rather than a single emotional confession. This creates something important: investment. The more someone discovers naturally, the more their own attention becomes involved in understanding you. And what a person actively discovers often carries more psychological weight than what they are simply handed. But remember the difference between mystery and emotional distance. Mystery says, there is more to discover. Emotional distance says, you cannot reach me. One creates curiosity. The other creates confusion. You don't need to disappear, manipulate, or intentionally leave someone anxious. You simply stop giving away everything before the relationship has earned it. Let your personality unfold naturally. Let your values become visible through your behavior. Let your emotional depth be something experienced, not advertised. Because the woman who explains everything leaves little for the imagination. But the woman who allows herself to be discovered creates a deeper psychological process. And that process is what makes connection feel personal rather than interchangeable. There is a major difference between being difficult to reach and being difficult to disrespect. Many people confuse attraction with playing hard to get. They believe that ignoring messages, creating jealousy, or intentionally becoming distant will make someone chase harder. But those tactics may create temporary tension without creating genuine respect. Real power comes from something much simpler: standards. A woman with standards doesn't need to pretend she is unavailable. She is available to genuine connection, affection, and intimacy, but she is not endlessly available to inconsistency, manipulation, or disrespect. This changes the psychological dynamic completely. When someone realizes that your attention is not guaranteed regardless of how they treat you, they begin to understand that access to you has a condition: mutual respect. That doesn't mean demanding perfection. Everyone has bad days. Everyone communicates imperfectly. Everyone makes mistakes. The difference is whether the pattern continues after the problem becomes clear. If someone repeatedly disappears, returns whenever convenient, gives you attention only when they want something, or treats your feelings as an inconvenience, constantly explaining why it hurts you may accomplish very little. Sometimes the strongest response is not another emotional conversation. It is a change in your participation. You stop chasing. You stop over-explaining. You stop rewarding behavior that consistently makes you feel insignificant. And if necessary, you calmly step away, not to punish, not to create fear, not to make him beg. You walk away because your self-respect has become more important than maintaining access to someone who refuses to meet you with the same level of consideration. That calmness communicates something powerful. It says, I can care about you without abandoning myself. This is where genuine confidence becomes visible. You don't threaten to leave every time something goes wrong. You don't use silence as a weapon. You simply have boundaries, and you consistently honor them. Because people learn how to treat you partly through what you repeatedly accept. If you accept inconsistency indefinitely, inconsistency becomes normal. If you calmly require respect, respect becomes part of the relationship's foundation. And this is why playing hard to get is weaker than having standards. Playing hard to get says, I want you to chase me. Having standards says, you are welcome here, but not at the cost of my dignity. That difference is enormous. Your goal is not to become unavailable to love. Your goal is to become unavailable to anything that repeatedly diminishes your value. There is a subtle psychological truth about human connection. Sometimes you don't understand the value of someone's presence until you experience a little space without it. But there is an important distinction here. Absence is powerful when it is natural. It becomes manipulation when it is manufactured. You don't need to disappear for 3 days to make him panic. You don't need to ignore messages to create anxiety. You don't need to post things designed to make him jealous. Those tactics may create reactions, but a reaction is not the same thing as genuine emotional value. Real absence happens when you have a life that doesn't revolve around someone's attention. You have your own goals, your own routines, your own interests, your own people, your own sense of direction. And because of that, you aren't constantly available simply because someone decides to reach for you. This matters because over-availability can prevent someone from ever experiencing your absence. If you are always responding instantly, always initiating, always checking in, always making yourself accessible, and always filling every quiet moment, there is very little space for the other person to notice what your presence actually contributes. They become accustomed to you, and familiarity without appreciation can easily become taken for granted. But when you naturally return your attention to your own life, something different happens. There is space. He has time to notice the conversations that aren't happening, the moments you would normally share, the energy you used to bring, the little things he associated with you. This is where curiosity can grow, not because you forced it, but because you stopped interrupting the natural psychological process of missing something. A woman with purpose is naturally less predictable, not because she is trying to confuse anyone, but because her life contains more than one person. She may be focused on work today, spending time with friends tomorrow, learning something new the next day, enjoying her own peace after that. Her availability isn't controlled by someone else's attention, and that creates a healthier kind of attraction because she isn't communicating, I am waiting for you. She is communicating, I enjoy you. but I also have a life I genuinely enjoy without you. That distinction can completely change the emotional dynamic. You don't need to make him miss you. You simply need to stop giving him a reason to take your presence for granted. Because when your presence is meaningful and your absence is natural, he has the opportunity to recognize the difference. And if he truly values the connection, that space can create appreciation rather than dependency. The moment you start competing with other women, you have already accepted a position that weakens you. You begin looking sideways instead of forward. You start wondering whether someone else is prettier, more interesting, more successful, more available, or more agreeable. You compare your appearance, your messages, your personality, and even the way he responds to you with the way he responds to someone else. And slowly, without realizing it, you stop asking the most important question. Is this man actually giving me the kind of relationship I want? Instead, you start asking, how can I become better than my competition? That is the trap. Because attraction is not a marketplace where the person with the longest list of advantages automatically wins. If it were, every relationship would be predictable. The most attractive person would always be chosen. The most successful person would always be chosen. The person who gave the most attention would always be chosen. But human connection doesn't work that way. A man can have countless options and still become emotionally focused on one particular woman because of something that cannot easily be measured: the experience. Maybe he feels unusually understood around her. Maybe conversations feel effortless. Maybe he feels calm instead of pressured. Maybe her personality challenges him in a way he genuinely enjoys. Maybe she has a quality that reminds him of something meaningful. Maybe he simply feels that the connection has depth. None of these things can be created by trying to become a copy of another woman. And this is why individuality is more powerful than comparison. If you constantly modify yourself to compete, you become less distinct. You start becoming whatever you think he wants. But when you know who you are, what you value, and what you will not compromise, you become psychologically clearer. You are no longer saying, "Choose me because I can beat everyone else." You are communicating something far more powerful. If you choose me, you're choosing an experience that is uniquely mine. That doesn't mean pretending to be rare or superior. It means refusing to measure your worth against people you don't even know. Because someone else's beauty doesn't diminish yours. Someone else's confidence doesn't erase yours. Someone else's presence doesn't determine your value. And if a man genuinely has many options, your greatest mistake would be trying to become another option that happens to be slightly better. Instead, become unmistakably yourself. Give him something authentic to respond to. Let him discover your character, your standards, your humor, your depth, and your way of seeing the world. Because options create variety, but connection creates preference. A person can have access to many possibilities and still recognize that only one connection feels like home. And that is why you should never compete with his options. You are not trying to win a competition. You are discovering whether the connection between you is valuable enough for both people to choose. Most powerful takeaway? Don't become the woman who beats the competition. Become the woman who doesn't need to compete. At the end of everything, there is one truth you need to understand. He doesn't choose you because you defeated every other option. He chooses you because being with you creates something he doesn't experience everywhere else. This is where many women lose their power. They spend so much energy trying to become more attractive, more available, more impressive, more understanding, or more desirable than every other woman around him. But love is not a competition with a scoreboard. You can spend your entire life trying to be the best option in the room and still miss the deeper principle of attraction. Because the woman who becomes unforgettable isn't necessarily the woman who gives the most. She is the woman who brings something distinct. Maybe it is the peace she creates. Maybe it is the way she listens without trying to control. Maybe it is the confidence she carries without demanding attention. Maybe it is the depth behind her words. Maybe it is the fact that she has a life, identity, and purpose that existed long before he entered it. That is what makes her difficult to replace. And your power does not come from chasing his decision. Your power comes from becoming deeply secure in your own value. When you are secure, you don't need to constantly ask where you stand. You don't need to monitor every message. You don't need to compare yourself with other women. You don't need to convince him that you are worth choosing. You allow his behavior to reveal his intentions, and you remain grounded enough to accept what you discover. The woman who knows her worth doesn't demand to be chosen. She doesn't beg for commitment. She doesn't manipulate someone into staying. She simply creates a relationship where choosing her feels natural, meaningful, and difficult to replace, because what exists between them has genuine substance. And there is one final distinction that changes everything. Don't try to become the woman who gives him everything. Become the woman whose presence means something. Don't try to become the most available woman. Become the woman whose time has value. Don't try to defeat every other option. Become so authentically yourself that comparison becomes irrelevant. Because someone may find another beautiful woman, another intelligent woman, another charming woman, another woman who gives attention. But that doesn't mean they will find your exact combination of qualities, energy, values, personality, and emotional connection somewhere else. That is what makes genuine connection powerful. You cannot manufacture it through competition. You cannot force it through chasing, and you cannot secure it through manipulation. It is created through two people recognizing that what exists between them is worth protecting. So if there is one lesson you take from this entire message, let it be this. Don't try to become the best option in the room. Become the experience he cannot find anywhere else. And more importantly, become that woman for yourself first. Because when you no longer need someone to choose you in order to feel valuable, you stop chasing selection and start choosing wisely. That is where your real power begins.